There's been a recommendation I've made that's created a lot of conversation, so I'm here to talk about that a little bit today, but I do want to put it in context. And I do want to tell one story, and before I tell a story even, I want to congratulate Keel Ross. Yesterday, U.S. News and World Report released its latest rankings on public school, on schools, all schools, across the nation, and Chapin High School ranked number 4 in South Carolina. Number 1 and 2 are magnet schools that have selection criteria, so only one school in the state was ranked higher that has open admission. So that's huge. And for people who want to keep Chapin a secret, sorry, it's not going to help. It's only going to put the spotlight on Stephen more. But I'm so grateful to Keel and his leadership and all the wonderful things that happened there. I do want to tell you one story which is very intentional. When I first came to the district, which would have been, my first day of the job would have been January 2nd, 2011, and I was meeting with my direct reports, my chiefs, and so I was laying out some plans for things we needed to do, and one of them looked at me and said, "You do understand you are our 7th superintendent in 6 years. We don't always get excited about long-range plans of superintendents." And I said, "Well, I get that." So I talked a little bit more, and they kind of liked what I said, and so another person said, we kind of like you. Can we make a button? Can we wear a button that says, "We're in heaven with number 7? I said, "Well, that sounds really good." I talked a little bit longer, and by the end of the meeting, that same person said, we're creating a backup button. I said, "What is that?" "Open the gate for number 8. But I share that story to say that one of the things that I discovered when I got here was, and Meredith, if you could move to the next one there, was that the big issue was trust and a loss of trust. Before I started, the board had given me several, 3 months to visit with people all across our community, former board members, and why was it that we had this steady progression of leadership, and that in a district that is so outstanding, there was so much discord going on. And so the word I kept hearing was, well, we just don't trust the district. So my motto became to restore the trust. Now, what I found is that the district is extraordinary. And it is also, at the same time, very dynamic. Things are changing all the time. And so it's that combination of things that I have to be very much aware of as we move forward. We certainly want to remain extraordinary, and yet we have to recognize that we live in a dynamic environment. So I'm just going to give you some excerpts from the 2020 before we go to the main topic I'll discuss today. But we have one new brutal reality, and that is that our increase in student enrollment has returned to a steep trajectory of growth. And as you can see here, of course, for many years we were growing by leaps and bounds. Then we hit a point, I think in about 2007, where we peaked, and I would call this just sort of flattening out. But that trajectory has returned to its previous level beginning about 3 to 4 years ago. There are people who will tell you we are not growing, and these numbers only count kids who are in K through 12. This doesn't count our 4-year-old program, our preschool handicap. You add that, the numbers are much larger. So comparing 135th day, which is the day upon which we get our money, Mr. Richardson's our CFO, and so from last year on the money day to this year money day, we grew an even 200 students over a year ago. I don't like numbers that end in 00 because they look so suspicious. We have a neighboring district that every high school always ends in their graduates, they have 300 graduates or 400 graduates. I'm kind of suspicious of that. So I would like for it to have been 201 or 199, but it was 200. And if you look at the past 4 years, counting on the 135th day, we've grown 584 students, and that's just in K through 5. So the fact is, we're growing. Another long-term brutal reality for us is that our existing physical plant needs significant improvements. We are blessed to have some good facilities, but if you don't keep them up, if you don't stay current, we know what happens to them. So to address these needs, I put together the Vision 2020 plan, which I presented to our board in September and shared with you in November. Number one on that list was to build a third wing to Chapin Middle School. That one has gone swimmingly well. We have hired an architect, the plans are there. We have recently approved a construction management at-risk contract with a local provider, Contract Construction, and everything is on course for the new wing to open in August of 2018. That one's gone well. Number two is to build a new elementary school, which I'm calling right now the Elementary 13, for want of a better name, in the Chapin cluster. I'll come back and talk about that one because that one's been a bit of a buzzsaw. Number three is that I think in order to meet our needs, we have to have a plan for, really looking out for all of these issues related to growth and planning and development. And there is no planning office, hasn't been one here since '96. We're working on that, and we'll do it probably by redirecting stuff we already have to recreate a planning office. Number four was to continue our expansion of magnet programs and choice options, which we are doing. And that's again to make optimum use of existing space. We do have, for example, a program at Harbison West, Escalaris, which people bring their kids to every day from all 12 of our elementary schools. So it's to make use of existing space where we might have some room. We want to attract people there. And to enhance the ability of each school to compete with all other schools. We want every school to be attractive in terms of its offerings. And thirdly, to meet the unique educational needs of our students. For example, we have the Environmental Sciences School at Dutch Fork Elementary, which many people are taking advantage of. So that's ongoing. And then I would talk about this one briefly. I've presented this everywhere I could present it. But in addition to those other needs, there are many other things that need to be done. Upgrades at Nursery Road and Harbison West, both are schools without walls, which was a great concept in the 60s, but it doesn't work too well in 2017. Need upgrades at Dutch Fork Elementary, Corley Elementary. There's certainly a request for a fine arts center in the Chapin cluster. Upgrades to our technology infrastructure. Upgrades at Dutch Fork Middle, Dutch Fork High. Improved facilities for maintenance and transportation. Upgrades, additions at the district office. Upgrades to our safety security infrastructure. We need upgrades at Crossroads Intermediate, Irmo Middle, Irmo High. I think a construction of a second new elementary school also in the Chapin cluster, and construction of an additional intermediate and or middle school in the Chapin cluster, and probably both within a few years. And as I presented, one thing got added, which it came initially from the Chapin SIC cluster, but it's also been echoed other places, that we need additional athletic fields and improved lighting on existing athletic fields. So those are the basic parts, and I want to just show you the district. We have 12 elementaries, and you can see that Chapin is here, Lake Murray is here, and the other 10 elementary schools are located either in the Irmo cluster or Dutch Fork cluster. Taking away the zone lines, just give you an idea of what size the clusters are. And here you see specifically the Chapin cluster. We have 2 elementary schools, Chapin Elementary and Lake Murray Elementary. And geographically, it's certainly our largest area. Now, I want to talk about building a new elementary school in the Chapin cluster. Where we are with that is that I proposed that we build the new elementary school on what I called the Amick Ferry Road side of Chapin. And we do have options on a couple of pieces of property which join one another on Amick Ferry. And in being very transparent, I shared that broadly. And as you know, there's much opposition to that particular school. So let's talk about that for a second. So why would Hefner recommend a school on the Amick Ferry side of Chapin? Did I just throw a dart at the dartboard and decide what should happen? Well, it was very purposeful, very intentional, and I've been wrong a lot. I've probably been wrong already today. I may be wrong about this, but I want to share with you what my thinking was in making this proposal. Let's go back before we, well, it is about getting to the issue of trust and addressing that. And then, Barrett, here we go. The two things drove this. These were things that I heard during that listening tour that I did in October, November, December of 2010. One of the questions I asked of all these people that I interviewed, board members, former board members, people, names of anybody who gave me, that would give me. I talked, I don't know how many, and of course it was not a scientific study, but what I came away with that was that the trust had been broken initially when the district built Lake Murray Elementary in the late 90s. That the district took kids from Chapin and moved them to Lake Murray Elementary, and they didn't want to go. So I read that to say, and what they said was Chapin kids should be served in Chapin. So I thought that was a given. I thought that was something that people really, really did value. And secondly, the other thing that I heard next most was that the trust was broken at the time the district opened Valentine Elementary, which would have been, I don't know, 2001, 2002, somewhere in there, that in drawing those zone lines, they were actually trying to move kids from the Chapin cluster to the Dutch Fork cluster, and that these clusters are sacred. So I also took that was a given of the district, that people wanted us to honor the Chapin cluster concept. Now, Barrett, if you can go back to the one that shows the this one right here. So when you look at the Chapin cluster area, and again, here's Lake Murray, and here's Chapin Elementary. And as of the beginning of this semester, and again, our enrollment, if you take our numbers off Power School, you take them off at 8 o'clock today, it'll be one number. You take it off at 3 o'clock today, it'll be another number, because we have kids coming and going all the time. But on the 91st day of school, we had 2,055 K-5 students in this area who attend Chapin and Lake Murray elementaries, and as well as the fifth graders would now be at Chapin Intermediate. This is not counting our 4-year-old kindergarten, and it's not counting our preschool handicap, which is another large population. We do have 4-year-old kindergarten at Chapin Elementary. We do not offer it here because we have no room at Lake Murray. Many of our special ed children are transported to schools in other parts of the district because we do not have space for their programs here. So again, we have an issue with more kids than we have space for. So I was thinking about, where does the next elementary go? And as I said, I think we not only do we need one more, we need 2 more. But looking at where the next one goes, well, I was back on those principles of serve Chapin kids in Chapin. So that's why we looked at this area on this side of Chapin, because you can get all of the students who live here served in that particular area, and they don't have to go every day, as they do now, through the town of Chapin and down to Chapin Hill. So naively, I thought that would be a good thing and would help with traffic. Now, so that was my thinking about trying to locate here. I've also found, as I've talked through this, and I won't get into all the things that I've received in writing. It's pretty staggering if you look at it. And maybe some of it might be humorous about 10 years from now. But for one, I didn't know there were so many sexual predators on Amick's Ferry, but that's one of the letters I got. Do you know how many sexual predators live here?
Not in Chapin. Certainly not.
I'm going to tell you, there are probably sexual predators everywhere. There probably are. But one of the suggestions that we keep receiving is, well, build it down here, or build it somewhere off Wessinger. Well, to me, again, just thinking about it from a standpoint of my belief is that we want to serve kids as close to their homes as possible. And again, when I come up to Chapin, I live off of Marina Road, the traffic is coming out of Chapin like crazy on a morning like today, but nobody's going into Chapin, everybody's coming out of Chapin. But again, my thought was, well, if we can serve these kids who live in Chapin on this side, then as we make our adjustments, we take the kids who live here in Chapin and we readjust, and they're at the existing Chapin school, so we have Chapin kids in Chapin. And then Lake Murray becomes, the next step becomes a school that serves students in Hilton, White Rock, and on the other side of the interstate where there is a lot of growth. So suggestions have included, well, we don't want it here, build it on the other side of I-26 somewhere. Again, that's problematic just because it's more people having to cross the interstate, and there are only two places that it can be crossed. And another suggestion is make Chapin Elementary bigger. I would just tell you, I'm not sure that's possible, but even if it is, it would take away athletic fields that we have there, which is also a real priority for this community, and it would place more than 2,000 kids right here in this one location, which also has limited access points. So let's.
I have a question.
Yes.
What, for an elementary school, is there an optimum population number that you want in an elementary school?
Optimum number, yes. The max you want is 750, and that's by our board policy.
Okay, you're saying you've got over 1,000 in each one of these schools?
No, now right now we have over 1,000 at Lake Murray, slightly over 1,000. At Chapin Hill, we're under 800 right now because we have our 5th grade students being served at Chapin Intermediate. So we've already offloaded the 5th graders. So right now there are about 1,800 kids between these two. Our board policy says the optimum is 750. Now, from a funding standpoint, and Mr. Richardson can correct me if I'm wrong here, but most of our requirements for staffing, when you hit 750, then all of a sudden you have to add additional staff members. If you're under 750, you have 1 music teacher, 1 art teacher. But if you go over 750, then you have to up those numbers. So if you go over 750, you're better off to have 1499 than you are to have 751 from a funding standpoint. But schools are communities. We're not serving a public, we're creating a public. And we want kids to be in environments where they can, that they all have an opportunity to serve in leadership roles and be valued. And our board policy says 750 max on elementary, 1,000 max on middle school, and I think 1,700 on high school. I can't remember, I think it's 1,700. And right now we're in better shape with our high schools than we are with our elementary schools. Now, go to that, when people, go to the one that shows the Piney Wood School. Let's go there. So when people say, where did Hefner ever get this crazy idea? Well, I would tell you that at one time, we know there were 2 schools in the Amick Ferry area. One is the Piney Woods School, which I understand part of it is still standing. It's about 1.5 miles. I think it may be on St. Peter's Church Road, but about 1.5 miles from the property we've been looking at. And then there's another one, whose name escapes me, but it's also Piney something, Piney Grove, maybe. That may not be right. Piney something. It's a couple of miles up the road. So I wasn't the first person to ever think it might be a decent idea to have a school on Amick's Ferry. Yes, Scott.
What is the biggest reason people are giving for not wanting the school out there?
Biggest reason, I'd say the most common reason is traffic.
It seems to me like that would help traffic.
Well, go back to the slide that shows the roads.
It'll help with that, too.
Yeah, it would seem to me that it keeps all of these folks from having to go through the town of Chapin twice a day. Now, I will tell you, there are more car drivers at Chapin Elementary than there are kids at Chapin Elementary. Now, Lake Murray, with over 1,000 kids, is packed. It's congested. Chapin L is more. There are more drivers at Chapin L than even at Lake Murray. And in fact, I made a huge mistake there at the beginning of the year. I went over there and it was before school was letting out, and I was trying to cut through and get out, and boy, I had teachers all over me flagging down my car. I mean, because you can't travel some of those roads wisely when school's about to let out. But we do. I think the 800 kids at Chapin, we've got about 700 cars, or I don't know, that shouldn't give you a number. It's a huge number of cars. Again, it's the largest number of car riders we have is here. So, back to your point, to me, if there's something that takes the pressure off from these folks, we take them out of this mix twice a day. And, again, when I say, well, it's, Chapin Middle has worked out pretty well, and it's somewhere over here. And, but you still, to get there, everybody's got to cross across number 91 or at 97, which is, where's 97? This way, I guess. So, yes, to your point, but the number one issue is, the number one stated concern is the high volume of traffic on Amick's Ferry Road. And people say, have I been out there, have I done the study? I don't do the studies on traffic. The Department of Transportation tells us if it's acceptable or not acceptable.
I just don't understand how that increases. I mean, the traffic's already there.
All right, well, I'm probably going to be reading minds, but I think, people have said things that to me that, and in writing, and verbally too, but they basically said, the traffic is bad now, but if we put a school over here, they know it's going to be a good school, which means they think it will draw more housing there. It'll put more people in the area, and that it will make it more attractive for development. And someone said to me, I don't think this is in writing, but they said it to me, you get new houses, before long you get apartments, and when you get apartments they become Section 8, and one of the direct quotes I had was, Dr. Hefner, we want these people from Irmo to stay in Irmo. We don't want them coming to Chapin. So I think that's, but the main thing I hear is traffic, that Amick's Ferry's one way in, one way out. Well, when your district is located between a lake and an interstate highway and the Broad River, I think we probably have the most dead-end roads of any district in the United States. It's, I live on a dead-end road. I live off of Marina Road. And so it's a problem wherever we go. All right, Barrett, let's go back to the next slide. In terms of thinking about planning for the future, I don't pretend to be the absolute person who knows everything and whatever. I certainly depend on professionals, and we do have professionals involved. I listen to those folks, but I think about the quote from Wayne Gretzky, who, by the way, has a connection now with our school district. His daughter is the mother of the children of Dustin Johnson, who, by the way, is the #1 golfer in the world, came through our school system. When he was asked about the secret of his success, he said, "I skate to where the puck is going, not where it has been." And I think that that's what we have to do. We have to skate to where the puck is going. And as the Chinese proverb says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. And I worry about our waiting, because I think our situation is only going to put us back to where the district was in 2008, when we had 3,000 students in portable classrooms. When I got here, we had 2,300 students in portables, and that is not desirable. Yes, sir.
Who has the ultimate decision? Let's just say 100% of the public was against it. Is it a vote? Is it they put in feedback, or who has the final say?
All right, here's the skinny on that. I've been in this business a long time, and my previous district was, I don't want to repeat the pattern we had there. We were growing an average of 800 kids a year for the 16 years I was superintendent. We went from 13,000 to almost 26,000. I don't want to ever do that again, but I think I built, when I was there, I think we built 22 new schools. There are 3 ways that I know of that you can build schools. One, which is my preference, the state gives us money and we use it and build schools. The last time that happened was about 99 or 2000, and that was when our district built Ballantyne Elementary. We'd hope maybe we get some money from the state. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. There is going to be some money for schools, but it's going to go to the Abbeville school districts, the ones with the equity lawsuit. So that's not going to happen for us. The second and most common way is a bond referendum. And of course, the last one here was 2008. The problem with a bond referendum, if you'll go back to that slide that shows the entire district, the problem that I see with us getting a bond referendum here is that in order to build a new school here or anywhere here, you got to ask people down here in Gardendale and Whitehall and Coldstream and Harbison to raise their taxes to build a school over here. Don't think that's likely to occur. And historically, Chapin's been our lowest yes vote on referenda anyway. Might be a higher one or might not be, because there are people who don't want to vote for the school. So I don't think that's super likely. The third way to build a school is the school board can, within its authority, borrow money under what I call the 8% borrowing rule. They can borrow up to 8% of their their assessed value. And that was how this district built its 12th elementary, which was Oak Point. And I think Oak Point opened in like 2006 or 2007, and that's how it got built. So that's the more likely scenario. So the school board would have authority to do that. They have the authority to raise money through the value, the assessed value of the district. They could do it. We haven't explored all of that yet, but it would certainly require an increase in taxes. And again, you're going to be increasing everybody's taxes to make that occur. So the bottom line is, right now, we're on step 1 of planning for the future. And as I said to one fairly hostile group with whom I met recently, my recommendation will be to buy this property regardless of if it's elementary 13 or if it's elementary 14. That will be my recommendation if it meets the requirements, because property is getting scarce, and at some point it's going to be needed. But right now we only have the money, enough money to buy the property. So the next step is how you come up with money to build the school, and once we identify a funding source and we're able to build it, at that point it's a minimum of 2 years before the school is built. So under a best case scenario, there's not going to be a new school realistically before 2020, and it may not be then. We're just at step one, trying to plan for the future, and I see that my time is up. I'll be happy to remain for any questions you may have, and then we can go to the very last slide. Again, we're an extraordinary school district, and we're a dynamic school district. My fear is that if we don't skate to where the puck is going, we're going to become an ordinary district, and we'll be dying in terms of our reputation as a school district. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.